community, we've got, I don't know what type of sprayer it is, but it's spraying 20 feet. Half of it's going over a sidewalk, the other is going into a pond. It's just if you had a just different type of head,
Rotors.
or someone to come in and assess different types of heads that are more efficient that still hit the area. So there's a lot to be done. Again, irrigation's a big issue with us, but with the Zinner, I thought they said something about isn't there ways that we can monitor or get reports?
That's what I was gonna ask the same thing, like, I thought each and every
Time frame.
individual household, you'd be able to look and see how many people are, over watering.
And who's watering during time frames
times?
that are outside of the designated, and you could, capture it, shoot an email, you're in violation,
Step
and then, or hand it over, if they don't comply to, a code enforcement.
Or an alternative, again, looking at the ability
Or
to
bill
go
them
to
differently.
a different rate.
Yeah, and that's what will get people to stop.
Right.
Or they cover their costs from going outside of regulation.
So part of that is what Zinner had referenced, is once we get beyond our issues and we have some steady data, that we can actually do some really effective data analysis with, then we can start doing those things. But at the same time, we have to make sure that when we set up a procedure that's going to impact our residents, that we set up a procedure where we're doing it routinely, we're providing any of those communications equitable, and make sure that we're not just, picking, oh, well, today I feel like making some phone calls and telling people that they're watering out of their zones. And also, if we're going to spend the time evaluating that data, what teeth do we have to enforce it, or like Tony said, to, assess something through our rate structure.
Well,
So
that's
it's
billing codes in the system.
well,
That's probably the best solution.
but our rates are set by rulemaking, and so
We have
it's
to amend the rules to
Right.
do that, but again,
No,
that's
no.
just,
But that's the easiest solution as opposed to straining staff and, yeah.
kick it to commodity rate.
District manager. Anything?
No, I don't have anything.
That leaves us our utility manager report. Hello, Chris. You're a patient man, right?
I'm still smiling, but I got a bunch of bad news for you. Well, no, it's getting better quickly, but I'll leave most of the report not address it unless you have some questions. The other things are moving along, but we had a real meltdown, I'll call it, in the irrigation system in the back. And just to give you a quick background, the system out there has 5 pumps. One of them is what they call a jockey pump. So basically 4 pumps operating in the jockey. The jockey's a 50 horsepower pump, the other ones are 150. The only thing the jockey does is keeps pressure in the system, and then the drive system calls for pumps as the pressure needs to be increased by the demand. So the week before Thanksgiving, we had a little problem in the control system, and a seal on one of the pumps go bad. And so it's like, okay, we're gonna be down 2 pumps now because one of them is just totally trashed. And to give it from a little more historical perspective, when I looked at it 2 years ago, the board spent about $130,000 buying that jockey pump and the control system for it, the programmable logic, to put all that together. So, and they did have a note in the budget about we should be buying 2 pumps a year, but there was never any money put in the budget for those pumps. But we had the one pump go down. It's like, all right, we're struggling. Then a second one, the seals went bad on it, and it started leaking real bad. So it was like, as soon as we got the first pump back the week before, then we took that one out last week, and it's scheduled to be delivered tomorrow. And it's actually installed right now. They're just bringing the last pieces in the laser alignment to do it. So then we'll be back up to 3 full-speed pumps and in good shape. But at the same time, we had a problem with our logic controller, but it was shutting and tripping one of the pumps off. So, we're running along 80, 90 pounds, and all of a sudden it drops down to 10 or 15. We're like, what's going on? And we had BCI come out 2 different times, and the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, they had a 2-person team out there, went through everything. I walked out, the guy said, we ran 20 scenarios, it's all fixed, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, you're leaving for the holiday, what do you mean don't worry? He goes, so I came in Thursday morning, and the pumps had tripped at 6 o'clock. So when we look back on the record, sometime between it was midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, that pump was tripping, no explanation, no overheating, just out of the blue. So, what we did over the weekend is, just came in at 2 in the morning and at 7 in the morning, Dan and I, and if it was tripped, we'd turn it back on manually to make it run. So BCI came back out early this week and we can't fix it, we don't know what it is. And so we brought a drive guy out. He was out here Tuesday working on it. He goes, think I got it? Don't worry about it. Okay. Went out there Wednesday morning, 6:30, tripped. So he's coming back tomorrow and he thinks he has the solution and the new pump's going in. And so we hope to have the solution and have it all up. However, in the last 2 weeks, we have gotten a number of complaints from residents and snowbirds coming back if the pressure wasn't right, because so many people water between midnight and 5. You know, sprinklers aren't coming up, and of course, no rain for 40 days. That didn't help. And several of the people that called that were having stressed lawns, I said, look, just turn your clock to 7 to 9 in the morning, or sometime between 5 and 8 in the evening. And I said, and just run it. And I said, and add 5 minutes to your zones, because of the drought, the 15 minutes you've been running probably isn't adequate. So it caused a lot of public relation problems and consternation. I've talked to the people, and we sent out information to the homeowner association, property owners, and working with Mainscape. And I'm hoping that we have this problem resolved tomorrow for the most part. But to put it in perspective, I walked back there a few minutes ago, and 1,100 gallons a minute were going out of the system.
Wow.
Which, okay, 1,100 gallons a minute, 1.4 million gallons a day. You know, and if I go there when we were checking the system 11 or 12 o'clock at night, 3,800 gallons a minute, 3,900 gallons a minute. I mean, the water is rolling out of there. So, and the one thing I was going to bring up to you, and I'll be back with an agenda item, is we'll have those 2 pumps that are rebuilt that have been done in the last 2 weeks, and another one which is one of the original pumps purchased in 2005. But one pump back there is total scrap.
Is the jockey pump still running?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, it'll run and
So you got your 3 and then you got your jockey.
Right.
Okay, just want to make sure.
And so I wanted to come in for emergency, because we don't have it in the budget, is get one brand new pump to replace that one that's scrapped. I mean, there's no way you can fix this. The shaft's broken. And when I'm talking about buying a pump, $34,000. So,
Well,
but
we gotta have it.
with the amount of money that the people spend on their landscaping, we do have to have it. But, and another thing we looked at too is alternative irrigation schedules, maybe going to 7 days a week, and getting the HOAs and looking at the demand in each one of the master meters, and just try to balance it out so that you're spreading that out 7 days a week instead of 4. But as much water as we pump out, they will use and use more of it.
Yeah.
And I've apologized for it, and I would have put some blurbs out earlier, but when someone comes and tells you, hey, it's fixed, don't worry about it, the next morning, 2 days later, we got it, 15 scenarios. You walk in there at 6 in the morning and the pressure's at 30 pounds.
Well, thank you for coming in at
So
odd
you're
hours
16.
to check it.
Well, we're gonna do it again tonight, because we're seeing it shifted a little bit, but we think it's a thermal coupling in the pump that we have out. This control system's like calling for it, it's not there, and it's doing something even the programmers don't know.
Thank you, I know you're staying on top of that.
Yeah, well-
Do you have anything else?
No, everything else is running pretty good.
Correct.
Thank you, Chris. That brings us to supervisor comments. I'll start with our newest members.
Let's start at
Oh,
the
okay.
senior end, and then we'll
The
work down this
senior
way.
You know, Gary used to pull that same thing, start down here so he
Yeah,
can do the
let you guys
anchor.
go,
and-
'cause
Yeah.
mine's gonna take a while.
So I just have really just one thing. I'm going to either send a summary out, or maybe because we got such a heavy board meeting next, I might just send something to April to have her send out. But I was approached with a, I guess, a notification or a highlight that it's in the time period right now where Lee County is looking at where to put the next high school. Gateway is under consideration in Alva. So there's one individual who is involved in the board on this particular selection, either on the committee or something along those lines. And what they're kind of looking for is to get a pulse within our community on, you know, really, ideally what the selection committee would like to have is a letter of, you know, either recommendation or something from the district, because there'll be individuals that are gonna be for and against. What I'd like to do is just send the board members some information on what's happening, and even maybe with an idea that we would, maybe have staff work with, you know, one or two of these individuals to get a pulse check of the community. I mean, it would be my, you know, with 4 kids, it would be, you know, my recommendation for us to put together a formal board recommendation. And I'm hoping it would be positive, but in order to do that, I think we really need to get a pulse check of the community as a whole. That would help us.
Lee County School District already owns that.
Yeah, they do.
50
They've
acres.
owned it since 2004, so,
They have the property in Alpha too.
yeah. So really, my update is I want to make sure the board's informed on what's going on, and then we can make a decision on if we would formally make a statement either way, and if there is some involvement that we want to have as a board to help to capture some of this information, whether it's, you know, just working with a couple individuals who are already involved. I don't know if it's town halls or polls or whatever, but I'll send the information out and then we can figure out what next steps are.
Okay. Mr. Fox?
I just wanted to congratulate our new members and our re-elected member, and I know that we're gonna make a lot of progress this coming year.
It's gonna be.
Congratulations to you.
It's gonna
Yes,
be
we
an
will.
interesting year. It will indeed. Ms. Flair?
I'm gonna hold off on any suggestions until next year.
Okay.
So I have a little bit more focus.
Oh.
Okay.
Hey, and before you go, real quick, we are,
Your
just-
time's up.
Bill used to give me a little extra time. I just want to remind the board too that next week on the agenda, we do have that hour at the front of the meeting for our work session, work group. I'm still not sure exactly what to call it.
Work session.
Work session.
Work session.
And we'll be having some open forums to discuss some things too.
Yep. Thank you for reminding us
Yep.
of that. But our meeting's still starting
Yep.
at 3.
No.
Yes.
Yes, 3. We'll use the first hour for our open discussion to focus on some items.
Okay.
Do we have an agenda for that meeting? Because I've got a lot of items I would like to put on
Yeah,
it.
so ideally, we're gonna look at how we run the meetings. You know, do we need to shuffle some things around? At least this
I'm
is my.
assuming that's organizational structure?
Yes.
That's not going to be addressed at all tonight?
No.
Okay, so is that on, I
That'll
want
be
to see
on
that
the
on an
15th.
agenda.
Agenda, organizational will be on the,
Yeah,
on the
well,
15th.
well, I've got a lot of ideas that I'm not gonna sit here and go through all these right now, but how do I get them to everybody?
Well, here's what,
Give them to April.
well, but here's some, an opportunity too. The reason why I wanted to have this work session is because, you know, again, as a collective group, if there are things that we wanna kinda toss around, open discussion without any approval or whatever, we can have that opportunity for us to have some open discussion. One of the things that, you know, the 3 items that I wanted to have on the agenda is just how we run the meetings. Are there,
Yes.
you know, are there some opportunities to move some
One
things
on.
around? And I think I've heard some feedback from other individuals. So we'll spend a few minutes talking about the agenda. Can we move some things around to be more efficient and more effective? 2 is around kind of our goals. What are our district goals, our priorities, just to start the conversation, so we're all on the same page. As we move forward, we're speaking kind of with one voice. At least we're gonna talk about, how, you know, are there certain things in our meetings, guiding principles, things, you know, behavior, interaction that we wanna have. So those are kind of the items that I thought we would address. And then Ed, if you had some things that, or anyone
So
had
get
some
them to
items.
April, and she'll disperse them then.
Yeah, and we can even have open discussion.
Yeah, and part of, possibly a suggestion could be from a format. The first hour would be this dialogue workshop without taking formal action, but on the formal agenda thereafter, the meeting agenda, you can have an agenda item saying follow-up action from workshop or from working session. So that if you want to then implement some of the items you talked about at the workshop session, you could then adopt those or give direction at the regular meeting.
Yeah.
So that
Here's
could be a
the thing we
separate
talked about.
agenda
We
item.
want to assign this to staff to begin to have conversation. Or, I mean, it's my idea that we would have at least one of these sessions once a month for an hour, so we can have open.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen with other governmental bodies where they have a work session and then you may not wanna do it this way, 2 or 3 days later, they have the regular board meeting or council
Yeah.
meeting.
But we can
And
talk
they-
about options for that.
Yeah,
It'll be part of next,
The other one I wanna do is get us involved in that FASD, and there's a conference coming up here in Fort Myers, in late January. The Florida Association of Special Districts,
Mhm.
we gotta get involved in that.
Okay,
We've
who
gotta
wants to
get
go?
involved in
Cause
that.
we've already, we're already a member of FASD.
We are?
Yep, we're already a member of
We are a
FASD,
member.
and I've already got staff signed up for that, so who of you would like to go
I'm
to the
definitely
January
interested.
meeting? Okay.
Definitely interested.
what date is it? Send me the information on the
January
date.
29th.
And then we'll
Okay.
plow back to you if we can
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
So who do we
Send me
have
that.
from staff going?
Leslie, Chris, and myself.
You, Chris, and Leslie. Perfect.
The other one is that we had the report from Zenner last week, or last meeting. The issue is where are we at on processing or retaining, further retainage of that money relative to damages?
What happened was a letter was sent, or an email sent to Ford Line on the 22nd, I believe, 23rd, 22nd, saying that that request for the retainage did not comply with, was not a proper invoice under the contract. Then Zenner sent back an email saying, to Tyler, saying, is this what you want us to submit? I need to have some conversations with Tyler and with April about the response to that, because it's not our job to babysit the vendor. You know, our response is, here's what you need to do under the contract, and for them to come back and say, is this what you want us to do?
That's my point.
It's
We-
not-
We did, this was a turnkey contract, guys. A turnkey contract that had major issues relative to them and contract compliance. Us doing work for them is just absolutely uncalled for. We had no responsibility whatsoever to do it, and I interviewed staff and accounted for a lot of man-hours. A lot of man-hours that Zenner should have been in here doing it themselves.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I want to have that conversation with everyone, because they need to submit. They just need to submit, then we evaluate it and says it is or is not a proper invoice. Maybe it's a little bit of a harsh approach, but as opposed to saying, please submit this to make it a proper invoice. We told them, these are the provisions of the contract you need to look at. And please submit a proper invoice.
Well,
Is
I
this
just
a
wanna make sure that
certification?
we have our damages lined up for what we've got to claim against that retainage.
Well, and the question is whether or not we have the ability to even have that recourse, but that's something that we need to talk about.
Yeah,
I don't understand that at all.
We'll talk separately. I don't wanna-
Absolutely, I don't, yeah, that gets into a legal issue.
So, but I agree.
I just
I
do
agree with
not
Ed, we
wanna
need to
take and see that
We've
money
had
released.
conversations, and, several of us, I think, on what is, you know, what can we, or at least what we feel like we can retain, and
Well,
I think.
a good example is change orders. We processed 2 change orders that were, for the most part, bogus. They were bogus change orders. We've got access to get back to those. I don't care if we approved them or not, it was wrong. It was illegal. On a turnkey project, we should have never signed those change orders. They had the responsibility of providing those materials, and it was clear in the scope of the contract that it was written. So we have grounds for doing that.
So I think we need to formally document.
I just wanna make sure that
What we
money
think,
doesn't get
and
released
then-
and have to go through bonds or performance bond chasing that to get that money. But the other one then is that we'll take and use April as our sounding board to get items out to the others, because there's certainly things I wanna talk about, that organizational. We've got issues coming up in the next 60 to 90 days that's gonna require staff modifications as being recommended by DeCerbo. And they've got to start, we can't kick this can down the
Well, and I
road.
think what ends up happening is, the recommendation will come through on the 15th. Yeah, so we will be in a position to vote on accepting the org, modifying it, and then even progressing forward. So I think I think we'll be in a position on the 15th, to make a decision.
So then, if we got thoughts on that, run them through April.
Well,
correct?
there's a recommendation that's gonna be coming through based on, I guess,
The work-
Margaret.
the work group.
The work
Work
group
group.
and Joe. So there's gonna be a recommendation that's gonna come through. We would either accept that as a whole, or
But I
accept
mean,
it with
when
conditions.
are we gonna see that's my point?
Oh, you guys,
On the 15th.
did you give?
On the 15th.
But we got a preview of it, did we not?
I mean, if we got something, why aren't we all looking at it so we can understand it before the 15th instead of rushing
Yeah, I
into
would
it?
like, yeah.
We're supposed to be working on it tomorrow, is it tomorrow?
Yes, yeah. If you have information that you'd like to share, send it to April. If you have some
Okay.
concerns or questions, send it to April. And it's very possible we'd be able to address it in advance.
But can we got some information at the last meeting,
Right.
printed out. Can we not get that to Kathleen and to Ed?
I
You got
thought
it?
we gave them copies of it.
Did you get a?
What was handed out at the last meeting.
Is that what the recommendation is going to be? That it?
That was I can't remember what we handed out.
That had all the duties and responsibilities
Yeah,
of
job
the 4 key
descriptions,
positions.
The org structure,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that is gonna be really close to what's gonna be coming through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
There's
that's what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's,
There'll
yeah.
be more detail with the next one, but it wasn't, it's still a work in progress. So if you have anything that you want April to consider, or you want the work group to consider, send it to her.
Okay.
There's a working draft.
Yeah,
And
okay,
everything like
I'll stop it right there.
Okay,
But that's good. I mean, we want these opportunities to have more open discussion, at least in my opinion.
absolutely. With the idea of FAST, I do want for us to consider the Florida Rural Water Association, which I brought up before. They have a lot of other resources, and it all is concerning water and wastewater. And they've got regulatory information. It's a great resource, and I think it would be worth our while to join this organization
Agree.
also. So
How much is it?
it's like $300-400 a year.
Do you want a motion to join it right now?
Do we need a motion for
I
that
don't think
amount?
it needs to be. I
I don't know
think
why the
that
management
just
can't even
wanna-
just do that.
Yeah.
Right, I want,
Yeah.
Just do it.
I have a note.
Here you go. Do you have a copy of it?
I'll make copies of
Okay.
it before I
Yeah,
leave,
I'd
and
say
I'll
just-
give it to April
say
and
just-
Chris,
Where's
cause
the
I
note
really think this will be beneficial for us. Okay, and that was the only thing that I had, so with nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Second?
So ordered.
So ordered.
Now, how do you shut this thing?
We are
down?
adjourned.
Yeah.
I can tell you've run money before, huh?
You know what's gonna be, we gotta get used to Marty's verbiage. She does things a little bit different than you, and there's a little bit of a lag on some, like, that's not the reason why she does
So send it to you under that cover.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
just
That's
for
the lead in.
everyone's issue,
Yeah, that's to try to prevent
I
it
gave a
from
little
under
more
public record.
leeway.
Maybe get-
I've
get-
been
get-
pushing these meetings
So
on.
attempt to at least cover that.
That is fun.
I'm not sure, I don't, no, I turned it off.
Oh, I gotta show you something.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ribbon? I gotta show you. First, I want.
My experience has been that I've had an argument on that before, and they're.
So here's the board.
Oh, nice.
So on this side, you had, that's him doing.
Eye catching,
Yeah.
on water to drink, yeah.
And then, so in
Oh,
the
yeah.
middle.
Totally convinced.
I
them.
thought I
There's
did
graphs,
this when I
and then-
applied.
I'll just give you my whole
Here's,
deal of what the issue
That's
is.
the filters that he made.
Uh,
And these are pictures of what the water look like.
Okay,
And then
I'll do it.
over here, here's like the materials, this
Okay.
is test. And as a result,
Tyser's got a real problem.
they had,
Tyser's got a real problem.
they had something tonight.
Subbing out 100% of the
So he
He's
received
in a real bind.
first place
Well, his
for environmental
one
science
sub threw his other
category.
sub under the bus.
And he
Just set our
received
case for us.
overall second place
I
Do
got
what?
a copy.
for Friday.
Well, we
So-
made some mistakes.
Did that resolution get signed or?
Yeah. It was odd. It's
Used car salesman does that. The second
You get used
the second one he did,
your science projects when you go move forward, you go to regional, but it's at FECU, and they start giving scholarships.
and then the last one.
And you'll see the projects that get a lot of attention.
But I think it's because I forgot to
We
put
have
that
to
up.
go.
Water, you know.
So the Cooper project, if we had
We have
248
to,
water meters,
I like the
248
topic.
meters, we
We
had
have to
2
start
buildings
investing
in
in
our
what
system.
students might need you scholarship.
Can I close this window?
What happened?
Yeah, you go, yeah.
There's so much
Do what?
information there. This is what it became, and here's some Okeechobee water.
No, I just established.
He said he was really excited when he was explaining it, because we had a lot of
Said,
fun,
"There
'cause
were no
it's our
problems."
pond,
Now all of a sudden there's
you
problems.
know, and
I
And
did
plus
not
we go
hear
camping,
any
we're always
comments
talking
at
water.
all
What
from
if-
staff
what if we didn't have
about
water?
the.
But I appreciate your input.
You
It-
buy one of the
Absolutely
straws that has the
good.
carbon filter and you keep it in your
That's
pants.
my point.
Well, when I used to, growing up,
Let's say
I'd go
video.
camping up in the Smoky
Can you
Mountains.
go down?
My point
I mean, the-
makes no
you're getting-
sense,
the
other
snow
than
water's coming
a
straight through,
materials
you know,
issue
you
that
never had
started
to
to
do all that
creep
stuff.
up.
But you always
Now, what do you
took
do with
your
this
war-
computer?
your
Leave it here?
casing bells, and you had your little snake
No.
bait
You
know
kit
as
and
much
all
as
that
I
kind of
do,
stuff.
You take that with you.
Here,
You take it with you and all the hookups and everything?
you've had something done to it.
Sorry.
Diane's here, she can help you. I don't even know what you put it in.
I hear,
There, I use it for meter
I better,
Is there a sack?
I better take
Yeah, you
that.
should have a,
Okay, what about, Neil Montgomery, is it all this?
That's what this is.
Okay, all
Although there
right.
was some minutes and
Boy,
stuff.
we, so you don't need the information.
Do you want that copy?
I have.
Is that what you have that Neil gave?
Please
Neil
give
gave
me
out?
that.
Handed out?
Carry it loose?
I'll take care of it.
Or you
Are
want me to
gonna
keep
read through
it?
that
Why don't
stuff
I
that
do this?
Neil
Why don't I
gave?
leave it here, then come back in and meet with you?
He didn't give us a for the record.
Let's just go get it and you can have it.
Okay.
In the meantime,
We'll take Mr.
I've
Bennett.
been continuing to use my personal email
Yeah,
for
like I said, I know a lot of
contacting,
principals, the guy that
Chris
does the
and
leak
April.
detection, he lives in Fort
No,
Myers.
no issue?
You
They have
go
circuit
and
riders that go
go
around and have
on
different
your
areas
internet
in the
and go
state.
to the Microsoft
So I think
portal.
we should be taking
Okay,
advantage
what do I do?
of that.
Some of these.
Okay, so you just need some.
I'll see you probably tomorrow, 'cause I'm gonna
I
go
gave
to
that
Mark
to you the
Terry.
other day.
That's in that
Yeah,
stuff?
I got it.
Let me know.
Hey, I wanna see something festive.
Okay.
Next meeting.
I'm
I'm thinking maybe a red jacket.
Appreciate the job.
that I don't have, but I'll go to Goodwill
You
tonight.
do it once and say,
Their rate study is more.
You have fun?
Rural utilities, like 1,500 customers
so
in
not
Levy
like.
County.
Oh, and I wanna tell you something. I know what you're doing too.
No, go ahead, tell me.
So-
But whatever. But Joe said they could spring less. He's big.